A tale of unlikely heroism. The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty streets of Caldwell, Idaho, as Ethan Mills hurried toward Caldwell High School. His worn backpack bounced against his bony shoulders with each step, the fabric nearly as thin as his frame. At 15, he was all angles and sharp edges, taking after his mother's delicate build rather than his late father's sturdy physique. "Hey, String Bean!" The familiar taunt echoed across the schoolyard. "Running to Mama again?" Ethan's heart rate quickened, but he kept his eyes forward, pretending not to hear Brad Thompson and his crew by the bike racks. His sneakers picked up speed on the cracked concrete, employing the one advantage nature had given him, his swift feet. "What's the rush, Mills?" Brad's voice grew closer. "We just want to have a friendly chat about that math homework." The weight of yesterday's bruises still lingered on his ribs as he slipped through the front doors, merging into the stream of students flooding the hallway. Physical education was third period, Ethan's personal hell on earth. Coach Martinez stood at the base of the rope climb, his whistle dangling like a pendulum of doom. "Mills, you're up." Ethan approached the rope, his gym shorts hanging loose. The rough hemp felt familiar against his palms, familiar in its hostility. He jumped, gripped, and tried to pull himself up, his arms trembling with effort. "Come on, Mills, my grandmother could climb faster than that." Coach Martinez's voice boomed through the gymnasium, followed by scattered snickers. Sweat beaded on Ethan's forehead as he managed to lift himself a few feet before his strength gave out. He slid down the rope, burning his palms. 10 points out of 50. Hit the showers, Mills. That evening, Ethan sat at the kitchen table, pushing meatloaf around his plate while his mother, Sarah, tried to maintain a cheerful conversation. "Mrs. Johnson asked about you today," she said, her tired eyes crinkling at the corners. "She says you're doing so well in her son's computer class." Ethan nodded, his gaze drifting to the empty chair at the head of the table. 5 years had passed, but his father's absence still felt like a fresh wound. The Ranger uniform hanging behind the kitchen door caught the evening light, a ghost of what their family used to be. "I wish Dad were here," he said quietly, immediately regretting the words as he watched his mother's face fall. Sarah reached across the table, her calloused hand covering his. "He would be proud of you, Ethan. You're so much like him. Maybe not in size, but where it counts." She tapped his chest. "Your father never backed down from what he believed in, and neither do you." "Yeah, except he was strong enough to stand up to people. All I can do is run away." "Sometimes surviving is its own kind of strength," Sarah replied softly. "And you've got something special up here." She tapped his temple. "Your father always said brains beat brawn." Ethan managed a small smile, but his attention was drawn to the fresh bruise peeking out from under his mother's sleeve. Another mark from her long hours at Harrison Farms. The sight stirred something in his chest, a mix of helplessness and determination. One day, he promised himself, he'd find a way to make things better for both of them. One day he'd be enough to fight back, even if it wasn't with his fists. The crisp autumn air bit through James Mills's Ranger uniform as he made his final patrol through Sawtooth National Forest. Moonlight filtered through the towering pines, casting shadows across the forest floor. He'd been tracking a group of poachers for weeks, methodically building a case against them. Tomorrow he would submit his final report to the Forest Service. "Just one more sweep," he muttered, scanning the darkness with his flashlight. The beam caught a flash of movement ahead. Probably another deer, he thought. But something felt off tonight. Back at home, 5-year-old Ethan sat at the kitchen window, fighting sleep as he waited for his father's return. Sarah gently stroked his hair, trying to coax him to bed. "Daddy always says goodnight," the boy protested, his small hands pressed against the cold glass. "He'll be home soon, sweetie. The forest needs him tonight." The shots rang out just before midnight, 3 bullets fired from behind. No warning, no chance to defend himself. James Mills fell among the pine needles, his blood seeping into the forest floor he'd sworn to protect. When the sheriff's deputy knocked on their door at 2 a.m., Sarah knew. Mothers always know. She collapsed against the doorframe as the deputy removed his hat. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry." The investigation that followed was perfunctory at best. "These things happen," the local sheriff said, barely looking up from his desk when Sarah demanded answers. Forest service is a dangerous job. Lots of people don't take kindly to authority out there. My husband was murdered, Sarah's voice shook. There must be something in his reports, some lead. Ma'am, we've done all we can. Maybe it's time to let it go. But Sarah couldn't let it go. Every weekend for months, she drove to Boise, pleading with state authorities to reopen the case. Each time she returned home empty-handed, her hope diminishing like the gas in her ancient Chevy's tank. Young Ethan watched it all from the shadows of their small house, absorbing every detail of his mother's futile quest for justice, the way officials dismissed her, how the system protected the powerful while ignoring the righteous. These were lessons that would shape his future. All that remained of James Mills was a formal photograph in a black frame. Him standing proud in his ranger uniform, eyes bright with purpose. The actual uniform itself hung behind their kitchen door. Sarah couldn't bring herself to remove it, as if doing so would erase the last tangible piece of her husband. "Tell me about Dad," Ethan would ask on nights when the house felt especially empty. Sarah would sit beside him, touching the fabric of James's uniform. He was the kind of man who believed in doing what's right, no matter the cost. He used to say that evil thrives when good people look the other way. Is that why they killed him? Because he wouldn't look away? Sarah pulled her son close. Your father died protecting what he believed in. Sometimes that's the price of standing up to people who think they're above the law. The uniform continued to hang there, a silent reminder of justice denied. But in young Ethan's heart, it became something more, a symbol of the man he hoped to become, even if he'd never fill out that uniform the way his father had. To be continued. This is just the beginning of Ethan's story. From bullied teenager to cyber warrior, Ethan's journey will take him down a path where he learns to use his intelligence as a weapon against injustice. Through hardship, love, and sacrifice, he will uncover truths about his father's death and find himself in a battle far greater than he ever imagined.